It was a cold, moonless night in the late 1960s when Jerry Thompson, a seasoned truck driver, was making his way along Route 78, a desolate stretch of road cutting through the heart of the Pennsylvania countryside. The hum of his truck's engine was the only sound that accompanied him, aside from the occasional howl of the wind through the trees lining the road. Jerry had driven this route countless times, but tonight a sense of unease hung in the air, a chill that had nothing to do with the weather. Around 2 a.m., as Jerry navigated a particularly dark and winding section of the road, he saw a figure in the distance. A young woman, her clothes tattered and hair disheveled, was standing by the roadside, her thumb outstretched in a classic hitchhiking gesture. Jerry, despite his better judgment, felt a pang of compassion. The roads were no place for a woman alone at this hour. He pulled over and rolled down the window. "Need a lift?" he asked, trying to keep his voice steady. The woman nodded silently and climbed into the passenger seat. Up close, she appeared even more disheveled, her face pale and eyes haunted. She gave Jerry an address in the nearby town of Danville, and then lapsed into silence. Jerry attempted small talk, but her responses were brief and distant. Her presence was unsettling, yet he couldn't quite pinpoint why. As they drove, Jerry noticed a peculiar smell, like damp earth and decaying leaves. He glanced over, but the woman remained as still and silent as a statue. Finally, they reached the address she had given him. It was an old, dilapidated house, seemingly abandoned for years. The windows were boarded up, and the yard was overgrown with weeds. Jerry felt a shiver run down his spine. "This is your stop," he said, more to break the silence than anything else. The woman turned to him, her eyes now filled with a strange intensity. "Thank you," she whispered, her voice barely audible. She opened the door and stepped out, but as Jerry watched her walk toward the house, she seemed to dissolve into the darkness, her form blending with the shadows until she disappeared completely. Confused and unsettled, Jerry decided to leave quickly. He drove back to the main road, his mind racing. Had he just imagined the whole thing? The eerie smell still lingered in the cab, a reminder that something wasn't right. When he reached the next town, he stopped at a diner, hoping a cup of coffee would clear his head. Inside, Jerry recounted his strange encounter to the waitress, an older woman with kind eyes. Her expression changed from curiosity to something darker as he described the hitchhiker and the old house. "That house," she said slowly, "has been abandoned for years. No one lives there." Jerry felt a cold sweat break out on his forehead. "Are you sure?" he asked, his voice shaking. The waitress nodded. "There used to be a family there. The daughter disappeared one night, hitchhiking on Route 78. They found her body weeks later in the woods. Some say her spirit still roams the road, looking for a ride home." Jerry felt his blood run cold. The realization hit him like a freight train. The woman he had picked up was no ordinary hitchhiker. He had encountered the restless spirit of a girl who had met a tragic end. He thanked the waitress and left the diner, his hands trembling as he gripped the steering wheel. The rest of his drive was a blur, the night's events playing over and over in his mind. Years passed, but Jerry never forgot that night. He shared his story with other truckers, many of whom claimed to have seen the same hitchhiker on that lonely stretch of road. The legend of the vanishing hitchhiker grew, each telling adding new details and chilling encounters. Some dismissed it as mere folklore, but those who had experienced it firsthand knew better. The tale became a cautionary story among the trucking community, a reminder to be wary of who or what they picked up on those dark, deserted roads. And so the legend lived on, a haunting reminder of the unseen and the unknown, whispering its eerie warnings to those who dared to listen. To this day, if you drive along Route 78 on a moonless night, you might see her standing by the roadside, her thumb outstretched, seeking a ride from a compassionate stranger. But be warned, if you do stop, you may find yourself in the company of a ghost, reliving the chilling tale of the vanishing hitchhiker. Deep in the heart of the Appalachian Mountains lies Blackwood Forest, a dense and shadowy woodland known for its eerie silence and perpetual gloom. For generations, locals have whispered about the forest's sinister reputation. Tales of strange noises, ghostly apparitions, and people vanishing without a trace have made Blackwood Forest a place to be avoided, especially after dark. One particularly chilling story dates back to the early 1900s. Sarah Mitchell, a young woman from the nearby town of Harper's Valley, went missing after entering Blackwood Forest to pick herbs. She never returned. Despite extensive searches, no trace of her was found. Her disappearance became a tragic mystery, but soon after, strange events began to plague the town. It started with eerie howls echoing through the night, followed by sightings of a ghostly figure resembling Sarah wandering the forest's edge. Animals went missing, and crops withered. The townsfolk grew fearful, believing that Sarah's spirit was restless, trapped within the forest. Decades later, in the 1950s, a group of teenagers, daring to test their courage, ventured into Blackwood Forest on Halloween night. Among them was Emily Carter, a skeptical and adventurous girl who dismissed the old tales as mere superstitions. As they delved deeper into the forest, the air grew colder, and an unnatural silence fell upon them. The group, feeling uneasy, decided to turn back, but Emily, determined to prove her bravery, pressed on alone. Hours passed, and when Emily didn't return, her friends grew worried and alerted the authorities. A search party was formed, but like Sarah before her, Emily had vanished without a trace. The only clue left behind was her scarf, found draped over a twisted branch, stained with what looked like blood. The disappearances of Sarah and Emily added to Blackwood Forest's grim legend. Locals avoided the area, believing it to be cursed. Hunters and hikers who ventured too close reported feeling watched, hearing whispers in the wind, and seeing ghostly figures among the trees. One evening, Jack Lawson, a seasoned hunter familiar with the woods, decided to investigate the forest's dark history. Armed with a flashlight and his rifle, Jack entered Blackwood Forest, determined to uncover the truth. As he walked, the forest seemed to close in around him, the trees casting long, eerie shadows. Hours into his exploration, Jack stumbled upon an old abandoned cabin, half buried in the undergrowth. Inside, he found remnants of a life long gone. A torn dress, old photographs, and a diary belonging to Sarah Mitchell. The final entry sent a chill down his spine. It spoke of strange lights and voices calling her deeper into the forest, urging her to join them. Suddenly, Jack felt a cold hand on his shoulder. Spinning around, He saw the ghostly figure of a young woman, her eyes filled with sorrow and despair. "Help me," she whispered, before vanishing into the darkness. Terrified, Jack fled the forest, vowing never to return. He shared his encounter with the townsfolk, but few believed him. Yet the legend of Blackwood Forest grew, with more people reporting ghostly sightings and strange occurrences. To this day, Blackwood Forest remains a place of fear and mystery. Locals warn against entering, especially after sunset. They say the spirits of those who vanished still wander among the trees, seeking peace or revenge, their mournful cries echoing through the night. And if you listen closely, you might hear the whispers of the cursed forest calling you to join them in their eternal ghostly embrace. Millfield House, an old Victorian mansion on the outskirts of Brooksville, Florida, is infamous for its dark history and paranormal activity. Built in the late 1800s by industrialist Jonathan Millfield, the mansion was once a symbol of wealth and grandeur. However, it became a house of tragedy and horror, leaving a permanent stain on its legacy. The story begins with Jonathan Millfield's daughter, Eliza, a young woman known for her beauty and kindness. In 1895, Eliza fell in love with a local artist named Thomas Gray. Their romance blossomed, much to the disapproval of Jonathan, who believed Thomas was beneath their social standing. Determined to separate them, Jonathan forbade Eliza from seeing Thomas and arranged for her to marry a wealthy businessman. On the night before her forced marriage, Eliza, in despair, fled to the attic where she and Thomas used to secretly meet. Distraught and heartbroken, she took her own life, hanging herself from the rafters. Thomas, upon hearing the news, was devastated. He cursed the house and vowed never to return. The Millfield family was shattered by the tragedy, and Jonathan, consumed by guilt, fell into a deep depression. After Jonathan's death, Millfield House was abandoned for years, falling into disrepair. In the 1920s, it was purchased by a wealthy entrepreneur named Richard Bennett, who planned to restore its former glory. However, strange occurrences began soon after renovations started. Workers reported hearing sobbing sounds, seeing shadowy figures, and feeling an icy chill in the attic. Despite the disturbances, Bennett moved in with his wife and children. The hauntings grew more intense. Doors slammed shut, objects moved on their own, and Eliza's ghostly figure was seen wandering the halls, her face twisted in sorrow. The Bennett family, unable to endure the constant terror, left the house within a year. Millfield House changed hands several times, but no one stayed for long. In the 1970s, it became a bed and breakfast, attracting ghost hunters and thrill seekers. One night, a group of paranormal investigators, led by Dr. Helen Carter, conducted an overnight investigation. Equipped with cameras and recording devices, they hoped to capture evidence of the haunting. As the night progressed, the team experienced inexplicable events. Cold spots, disembodied voices, and eerie whispers filled the air. In the attic, where Eliza had ended her life, their equipment went haywire. Cameras malfunctioned, and EVP devices recorded a chilling message: "Help me, find Thomas." Determined to uncover the truth, Dr. Carter delved into the house's history. She discovered old letters hidden in the attic, detailing Eliza's forbidden love and her father's cruel intentions. Among the letters was a final unfinished note from Eliza, expressing her undying love for Thomas and her despair at their forced separation. Dr. Carter shared her findings with the local historical society, who then contacted Thomas Gray's descendants. They revealed that Thomas had left behind a series of paintings depicting a woman resembling Eliza, with a recurring theme of sorrow and loss. One painting in particular showed Eliza in the attic, with a shadowy figure in the background, Jonathan Millfield, watching over her. The revelation brought some closure to the town. Dr. Carter and the Historical Society held a memorial for Eliza, hoping to lay her spirit to rest. Yet even after the ceremony, sightings of Eliza's ghost continued. It seemed her spirit was forever bound to Millfield House, her love for Thomas and her tragic end, trapping her in a perpetual state of sorrow. Today, Millfield House stands as a testament to its haunted past. Visitors claim to hear Eliza's cries and see her spectral figure by the attic window. The house, now a popular destination for ghost tours, draws thrill-seekers and paranormal enthusiasts from all over. But for the locals, it remains a place of tragedy and ghostly reminders, where the past lingers and the spirit of Eliza Millfield still roams, searching for the love she lost over a century ago.